All right, that music makes me snap my fingers, tap my toes, and do something else. Kind of stuff. I love it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Well, that's patiently wait for the music to fade down. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Watchwell is my name. Natural philosophy is my game. And for those of you that have seen the show before, which I hope there are a few of you, you always know that the emphasis is to learn something. And so we always try to impart some knowledge in a kind of a different sort of a way, sometimes in a formal sense and sometimes in a humorous sense, and sometimes some things make no sense. So whatever it takes to try to get a point across, we'll do it for you. Okay, so this is a kind of a fun day for all of us. This is the day of the full moon, and ladies and gentlemen, I'll tell you, full moons can be strange, so it is a full moon, so we're going to spend a little time with that on the Where Are We segment, explaining the full moon, and of course, the program is being shot on the 4th, and that's a special day because it is the 95th anniversary of the birth of me mither, and I'll run that date by you. And it's also, I heard something on the radio this morning, that it's also the 100th anniversary of the United States officially getting their hands on the formal transfer for the territory of Panama to begin building the Panama Canal. And I brought along an old book here. It's an old book, and it's actually called the Book of Engineering and Industry. It's called Human Interest Library, 1920 vintage, some old book I have. And it has some pretty cool pictures in it. And that'll be the last part of the show, and we'll show some interesting facts and figures about the Panama Canal. But what I want to talk about before that is just a couple little things here real quick. I want to talk about the difference between two calendars. I mentioned, of course, that this show is on the 4th, and of course about the Indian Saka calendar, which I said in previous shows that we would mention. And also, before we get to our Earth geometry, I want to finish up one last little point about the Harley Davison that we did on the last, they're telling me where to look here. On the last program, we were talking about the Harley, and where the engine came from the old aircraft engine, and someone didn't know that, so I'll briefly touch on that. So we got about 4 things that we're going to try to cover real quick. We're going to have the Where Are We segments covering the full moon. We're going to have a little bit on the Earth geometry with my little gnomon that I brought down, and we'll finish up with the Panama Canal. So we always have a little fun things to talk about here. So let us jump into the program, and now we'll have the P.O. Box and program times flashing on the screen sometime through the program. So please watch the program. Tell your friends to watch. Okay, so we'll try to have some fun here, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, on the day of the full moon, sometimes things get kind of crazy, I'll tell you. Crazier than you could possibly imagine. Meanwhile, he will roll up his sleeves and get down to work. All right, so let's ponder the date here real quick before we talk about our Harley stuff. Now, like we said, ladies and gentlemen, that today is in the year of our Lord, 5/4/2004. Okay, and now remember when I say the year of our Lord, we are now, of course, into what is called the Gregorian calendar. Okay, so what that really means, according to that one, is I got to dig up my little thingy here. I have to look up what date it is of the year. It is, let's see, my other calendar here. It is the 100 and, I just want to get it here. According to the Farmer's Almanac, by the way, as you always know, the ongoing text for this program is the Farmer's Almanac. And that's why I always have facts and figures. But it turns out that today is, if we go from the first of the year, the May 4th, 1, 2, 3, 4, is the 100, and it's interesting here, the 125th day of the year, okay? That's interesting. And of course, I was talking about that I was going to use the Saka calendar from time to time. I mentioned that before, the Saka calendar. And according to the Indian calendar, it is only it is only the second month, and it is, I believe, the 14th day in their year 1926, and it is the 44th day of the year. So, and their months are about the same, 30 days, 31, it evens out, so it's kind of close. And of course, their second month of the year is called Vaisakha, so it's a little bit different. So we have May, and then they have, our second month is February. So again, I'm just calling to your attention that there's a different way to look at things. So it is interesting. You always have to have an open mind for all kinds of diversity. Okay, and then one more thing about me mother, God rest her soul, was born on this day in the year of our Lord in the Gregorian calendar, 5/4, that day, 5/4, 1909. And she ended up living until 1994. So me mother was 85. So is that my mother. So it's about this day. And of course, the other part of this day is, again, this was the day that the United States signed the official treaty to start the Panama Canal. So we'll get to that. Okay, now one more quick note. Before I get to the full moon, where are we segment, and then the Earth geometry. And that is, last time we were talking about the Harley Davison thing. And I told the story. And again, I told the story about the fact that the Harley Davison engine was originally derived from an 8-cylinder aircraft engine. I kind of told a story, and I didn't have a real good picture of it, and I kind of made a sketch like this, kind of showing, the radial cylinders like this, and then I told, so that's not real clear, and then I told a story that what the Harley Davison people did is they ended up keeping just 2 cylinders of it, and then they kind of reconstructed like a different, whatever, oil pan or rebuilding the crankshaft or whatever mechanical things they had to do. And then they ended up just saving, well, I didn't quite right, actually, just these two. They ended up saving just 2 cylinders when they designed their motorcycle engine. And again, that was kind of mishmashy. So I watched my own program and I said, oh, that was kind of okay, but not real clear. So what I did is, again, Andy, I'll see if you can get a good shot of this. What I did is I went on my little computer and I kind of spent a couple minutes and I made a kind of what I thought was a kind of a clarified sketch where I tried to show that these, in fact, were like the original 8 cylinders and then how they ended up keeping just the 2 cylinders. And again, after I did that program, I ran into someone, I started telling that story, and I said, oh, that's very interesting, see? So I said, well, you have to watch my program so you can learn some interesting facts and figures and other sorts of esoteric information that you might not get anywhere else. Boy, I'll tell you, this wig is so bad. I was just thinking about something. Maybe when I get really old and decrepit and desperate, maybe what I'll do is I'll put the wig on eBay. And maybe I can get who knows by then, maybe I can get $100,000 and retire. Okay. Something nutty. Okay, so that's the backup material. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are, how long we're okay? Well, not too bad. We're about 7 minutes into the program here. We can finally move ahead. So now, before we get to the Earth's geometry, let us talk about the full moon. Today is the full moon, and so let's talk about what that means, ladies and gentlemen, as you know. So we always refer to these things. So now, again, using the old Watchwell thing, we got my old 321, and then we got the old 421, and we got the old 521, and we got the old 621 business. Well, we said that the day's being shot down to 4, so that would put us, ladies and gentlemen, like somewhere about here-ish, okay? So then we got the sun over here, and then we got the earthy poo over here, and then we got the moon back here, because on the night of the full moon, you always know, on the night of the full moon is that the earth is on the backside of the planet. So we have the sun, earth, moon, and it says, now let's go to the Farmer's Almanac and then see what it says, what moon phase it's in, and then I'll look at my little charts and see if that makes sense. See, it's always kind of satisfying your intuition. Matching your intuition with fact is how you approach life. Okay, so it says, on this day, one more time. Okay, so it says that the full moon is occurring on the 4th day in the 16th hour, which is, I'm looking over here. In the 16th hour, which is about 16, would be 4 o'clock. 16 hours will be about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, the 33rd minutes will be 4:30. And then it says that the moon is in Virgo, so let's see if that makes sense. So the full moon's in Virgo. Let's see if that makes sense. So if we look at our other little trusty-dusty thing here, again, this one just kind of matches this, okay? So we just say we make this imaginary straight line. So again, we have the sun in the center, which is represents the red ball. The earth over here and the moon are all in alignment. And then over here, you look out here, and I have the constellations kind of written in where they occur, you know, at the different times of the year. And it shows that it's like halfway between Virgo and Libra. So, ladies and gentlemen, my little handy-dandy star chart is quite correct. And then, of course, if I need further verification, I go to my great big Hubble chart here, and then this has all the constellations and stuff. So, stargazing is fun because it doesn't cost much money. So there it is. So that's our kind of the Where Are We segment, where the sun is here and the moon is here and here and is here. So there it is. So we'll move on. We won't spend too much time with the star stuff. But what I do want to talk about today a little bit for a few minutes before I get to my Panama Canal stuff is I want to spend a little time with the old Earth geometry. And again, the reason why I bring that up, you know, is kind of like an old broken record, is because, like a lot of times you just got to review. Am I looking here? You got to review the stuff, you know, kind of over and over. And there are a lot of people who don't understand, you know, like now the sun rises and sunsets are further to the north, okay? And then that needs some explaining. And sometimes people just understand just by intuition or non-intuition, or they don't even understand why the moon is out some nights of the month and why it's not out some months in the month. So you got to just keep on reviewing. So what I want to do is I'm going to spend a little time on ye old-fashioned Earth geometry, and one more time try to, you know, hammer the point home. So what I brought along today is my little old, you can show, I don't know if it's the best way to show this here, against the white back here. I'll show it against a white background. There we go. I'll show this against a kind of a lighter background. This is my little gnomon here. And what I use this for, again, I've talked about the gnomons, of how the Babylonians and people like that have used the gnomons. But what I use the gnomon for is, again, it's just understanding the shadow. See, in order to really understand the Earth geometry, it all goes back to the old 23.5 degrees. And so kids, they read about this stuff in textbooks, and, you know, they are pounded in their brains all their lives, but then there are a lot of people who never really make that real connection, even though it's real simple. So I just want to spend a little time with that again, because now that we're we're going to be approaching the next node point, will be June 21st, will be a very important point. So one more time, it's good to review. And just understanding little Earth geometry with an extension of the gnomon will help you understand this whole business. And what I want to do is, again, how I want this to tie in is with the old with the little gnomon. So what I'm going to do to explain this here, I have done this before, probably a dozen times on different times of the year, but again, I was kind of reworking this. Now here's how we're going to do it today. See, you always have to be open-minded here. Every time, you know, you analyze something, it's kind of like a professor, you know, you say, well, you teach it one semester one way to your kids, and then some of them got it, some of them didn't. Then you come back the next semester and you say, well, on that particular topic, I'm going to approach just a little bit different. So that's the same thing with Watchwell. You just keep on rehashing the kind of like the same information over and over to finally make it clear. So how we're going to do this today, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to now take the Earth, as you know, the name of the show is called Ride the Planets. That's the whole ball game. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the whole planet Earth, and we are going to just cut off just 25%. So the other 3/4 of the planet are going to be gone for the sake of this conversation. And then what we're going to talk about is how this part here, how it kind of just tilts, you know, up to the 23.5 degrees. And so how we're going to do this, we're going to say here, we're going to go up here, and we're going to make this right here the 45th parallel. Because as we are on our planet, as you know, ladies and gentlemen, in the Wausau area, we are in a very unique area where we are like the 90th latitude and the 45th parallel. So that makes it very, very interesting right here. But of course now, always remember that 23.5 degrees, right? I mean, it's like a broken record where the planet, you know, one more time for review, the planet is always on that permanent that permanent 23, oh man, my 3 is bad. A permanent 23.5 degrees, okay? And then, of course, it always stays the same. I mean, the Earth goes like this around the sun, always, 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 always. But the point that I'm making is that how the light from the sun always comes in a straight line. So it's like the sense of the straight line from the sun that makes things seem different on the planet. See, and that's where it kind of gets tricky. So in reality, even though the Earth is always going like this in the one annual cycle, it appears the planet itself, in terms of the light coming from the sun in a straight line, tends to rock. So you have this kind of like this 23.5 degree rock. And that's why I chose to show this only like just as a quarter of a pie. So you can, it's easier to vision just a quarter of a pie kind of rocking 23.5 degrees from this line and then rocking 23.5 degrees, you know, this way. So you have like this, and then it goes like this and rocks that way. So that's how what you kind of visualize as your boundary. When you get into advanced mathematics, they have the concept what they call boundary value problems, and then you establish the boundary. So what I want you to envision for the sake of this conversation is that the Earth is sitting here, and then it will kind of rock this way for summer, and then the sunsets are further to the north, because always remember that the rays of the sun are always coming in a straight line. See, that's a given. The rays of the sun are always coming in a straight line, but it is the planet that appears to rock. And then if it goes, when it rocks back this way, then that's like in winter time, and then hence the sunsets are to the south because the planet is moving that way. And again, the planet doesn't move. The planet moves around the sun in rotation, but on its axis, it remains the same. Oh boy, time is going by fast. Okay, so that is the setup. So now let me quickly get back to my gnomon and then explain the geometry a little bit so you can have a little better understanding, so you, again, can research this stuff and go through some numbers, and then we'll try to get to our Panama Canal. So what does this quarter of a pie have to do with the gnomon, and what does that have to do with 23.5 degrees, and what does that have to do with the sunset? What is that mean? Okay, so here it is, ladies and gentlemen. In 25 words or less, here it is. I actually made a nicer thing. I don't know if this will pick up in white, but actually I went and I actually did this on my computer here. I don't know if you can get that, Andy. It's white, maybe doesn't show real good. But I actually kind of laid this all out on the kind of computer where it's all kind of a cleaner thing here. But so again, it all has to do with the fact, or I'm going to start in this configuration where the pie is straight this way and straight this way, and the sun rays coming straight that way, would be what happens at 3:21 or spring and 9:21. Okay, I got to kind of pick up the pace because Earth geometry gets a bit complicated. And so on that particular day, you know, the sunrises and the sunsets are even. They take place exactly 12 hours. So it's 6 o'clock in the morning, 6 o'clock at night. And getting back to our little gnomon business, again, what you got to visualize is that there's a little stick sticking off from the planet. And again, always remember that the sun rays are coming in straight. See, they're coming in straight, straight, straight. Light rays from the sun are straight. So what it does is on the spring and in the fall, because we are on the 45th parallel, that this light ray coming through here ends up making a perfect 45-degree angle on your little gnomon. So you have, as this is tilted, you actually have like this perfect 45 degree, of course, but because we're on the big planet, it just looks like this. Is you got to stick here, and then the light from the sun comes here, and then makes, you know, a perfect 45 degrees, which matches your latitude in spring and fall. And that's really just cool as heck. But now what happens, and it gets, again, this is where it gets, you know, non-intuitive, is that as we go through different parts of the year, like now we are now going in like to the summer mode, then what happens is the planet appears to rock. So then you have the same 90 degrees, but then now you have the same 90 degrees, but now it's tilted. You're 23.5 degrees up here, so hence your same 45th latitude appears to be kind of much lower. So what happens at that point is that this gnomon, going back to this gnomon business, is that as you're, see where we're in summer now, the angle ends up appearing much different. So again, it's straight the sun rays are coming in straighter, so this is up like here, so then it ends up appearing as though the angle from the sun ends up being like, 68 degrees, and of course that ends up being magically the same number of the 45 plus the 23 and a half. And what I'm doing is I'm citing, there's actually three extreme cases. One is spring, fall, summer, winter extremes, and then it just kind of gradually goes, kind of oscillates in between. And then there's one more example that I have to show quickly to try to tie this in. I gotta wash my tank here a little bit. And then the other one I've got to tie in here is the one when the Earth, when it rocks all the way back to the winter. It's the same thing. I'm trying to use the same example here. Again, only if I think of it only has the small part, I think will be easier to visualize. And again, we'll do the same thing. We're going to make just our little quarter section going back to here. And now this would be like what happens at 1221. And then you have your same 45th latitude up here. And of course, this ends up being like the North Pole over here. And now we are rocked the full 23.5 degrees there. And again, going back to our little gnomon trick, that lo and behold, how it appears at that point is that when you have the little stick sticking out over here, is again that the sun rays coming in straight ends up being very long. Hence, on our little stick as it appears from the sun, it ends up being like in the fall, it ends up being a very long angle. And lo and behold, again, this repeats, this goes back to the same magic number of, in the lowest time, it's our latitude, 45 degrees, minus 23.5 degrees, and it ends up being approximately 22, a very low angle of 22 degrees. So again, just a little more of the Earth geometry, kind of hammering home this kind of the same old stuff, but it's just interesting to note. So then when you read in the Farmer's Almanac and they talk about the apparent declination angle and all that stuff, it all kind of makes sense. Okay, so we got, we're not doing too bad here. Now, finally, okay, so we're past the full moon, we're past the Harley Davison, okay, we're past the Earth geometry one more time. Now we're going to spend a few minutes talking about some of the wonders of the Panama Canal. And again, it's like I was saying before, I was kind of laying in bed here and they're talking about this and this, that, and the other, and of course, they're talking about the Panama Canal. So I dug up this old book because this was actually something that I was going to talk about any number of times, but today, because I heard it, something on the radio kind of jogged my mind. So it turns out that just a brief, I could do this kind of quick here, the really brief history of the Panama Canal. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, well, you know, I don't want to get all the maps and stuff, but as you know, how the Panama Canal, North America is like here and South America is down here. And then, of course, the object was that in the old days, before they had airplanes, that, who wanted to go, all the way around South America from San Francisco or whatever. It was thousands and thousands of miles. So before there were airplanes, that was the big quest, was to connect, the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific Ocean. That was the big quest, of course. And in a brief history, okay, in 25 words or less, originally there actually was no Panama. This was owned by Colombia, okay? Originally it was Colombia. And it was Teddy Roosevelt who kind of was kind of persuaded, put that in quotation marks, persuaded Colombia to kind of give up the territory to become the little independent Panama, which we then would protect. But it turns out that in 1886, it was the French that tried to construct the Panama Canal, and I won't go through all the names, I was just reading through the history. And they actually tried several times, and they were not able to do it. So finally, the Americans bought out the contract, and so it was actually this day. So it was actually May 4th, 1904, that the United States finally got their hands on the territory. And it turns out that about the Panama Canal, the canal itself actually is really not that long. It's like maybe with all the lakes and everything, it's less than 50 miles, but it was one extreme part that had to be cut out of the way, and I'll try to talk on that a little bit. But it's interesting to note that they were going to try to make a canal through Nicaragua, And again, it's not really the length that they had to go through. It's just that they could go through it, because as a point of reference, the United States was quite prepared to take on such a kind of a difficult project. Because if just a little bit of history here, the Erie Canal that went from Albany to Buffalo was 352 miles. So the United States was able to take that on, but the Panama Canal was much shorter. However, they had to move, literally had to move a mountain to do it. And the most interesting part was what they called the Mount Culebra cut. And what they physically had to do is they actually had to move a mountain. And I'll cite, I got just a couple minutes here, and I'll cite some of the facts and figures. I don't know if maybe I'll just show some of these pictures, but let me just kind of, I can't turn this into a history class, but I'll just cite some of the facts and figures. It said the wonders of the engineering. It says that the Panama Canal was built, finally finished like around 1913, and the final cost of the canal was $375 million, a toll of thousands of lives, almost 222 million cubic yards of earth and rock had to be excavated. 5 million cubic yards of concrete were poured into the locks, and it just kind of goes on and on. And I'll just show a picture here of how they had to do it. Is they actually had to cut through a mountain, and what they were doing is they would build kind of like the train track. There's any number of pictures in here, but it's kind of pretty cool how they do this. The Culebra, of course, means Snake Mountain. They have this big mountain here. So the mountain was like this, and how they actually had to cut through the mountain. How they did is they kept on going like this. They had the big mountain over here, and what they did is they would lay the train tracks next to the mountain, and then they would keep on excavating. And then as they would get further on, and they would, of course, blast with dynamite or whatnot, and they would keep on blasting, and then they would keep on moving the train tracks closer to the mountain, and closer to the mountain, and closer to the mountain, and closer to the mountain, till they finally had it cut away. And again, it says, in the book, it says in Mount Culebra, it said there was a total of 300 million tons of earth that had to be removed for the canal. And then when they finally had it wide enough, of course, then, when they had it cut away, just like you would make a road, then you cut it away, and then they finally, build, all the last. So it's pretty nutty stuff. I hear my music in the background. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about the time. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is the full moon, and we had a lot of fun today, more than you can possibly imagine. So, Watchwell is my name, and Natural Philosophy is my name. And, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. We'll take the next